So, my thoughts on what happens when we die. When you die, there's a switch that's flipped in your body. And once that switch is flipped, all the bacteria in your stomach or in your brain, or the bacteria that's on your skin or in your eyeballs, it starts to consume you. And so if you look at this scientifically, if we forget about religion, if we forget about, your wants and dreams, or just look at where your consciousness is. Look at where your consciousness comes from. At least is the best way we can think about it, right? So, in your brain and in your gut, your consciousness comes from your brain as best we can tell, because if your brain, if we take out part of your brain, it's going to change your personality. If we take out your entire brain, you might be able to eat, but you're not going to express a consciousness. But there's also some consciousness in your gut. There has been some scientific studies shown that if you take a person who's anxious and you take some of the bacteria out of their gut, and you take a person who's calm and you put the bacteria from the person who's calm into the person who's anxious's gut, that person will be calmer. I know that if I get these probiotic drinks like this, they help me with my anxiety, because there is probiotics, there's bacteria in here that is calmer than the bacteria that's in my gut. You have bacteria living in your gut, and there's actually more bacteria in your body than there is human cells. There's more other cells, and part of your consciousness has to come from that. There's been a lot of arguments about whether or not we have free will when you take things like the organism that lives in that cat litter. So if you don't know about this, it's something worth looking up. Look up why pregnant women should not change cat litter. The reason is because there's a organism that lives inside of cat litter that its whole goal in life is to get into the belly of a cat so that it can mate and breed and continue its life. That bacteria that lives inside the belly of the cat, if it gets into the belly of a rat, it will change the way the rat thinks. It'll make that rat attracted to cat pee, and it'll make that rat not afraid of cats, so that the rat will get eaten by a cat, so that bacteria can get back into the belly of a cat. Well, it is possible for that bacteria to get into a human system, and the one thing we do know is that it causes birth defects. But the things that we don't know is if it affects the brain of a rat like that, can it affect the brain of a human? Can it affect our decisions? And there are a lot of things inside of our system that affect how we make a decision, that affects our consciousness. So when you have a gut feeling about something, then that's where that's coming from, is the part of your consciousness that is in your gut. So all of the bacteria that is in us is part of our consciousness. Now, our consciousness is an energy, and the energy cannot be created or destroyed. It can only change form. So when you die and the switch is flipped, then you're going to, that part of your consciousness that's in the bacteria is going to go out into the ground, and it's going to be eaten by whatever scavengers eat you after you die, whatever carrion eat you when you die. So if you were to die naturally and have the vultures and the birds feast on you and then fly away, or if you were to have a tree then use your body for fertilizer, and then your consciousness might be in the apple of the tree and whatever eats you, and then that's how you could be reincarnated. You could be reincarnated that way because you might be reincarnated into the carrion birds that eat a lot of your consciousness, and you might experience that, and that's where you go out into the universe when those birds start to eat your consciousness, eat the bacteria that were your consciousness, and you're going to go out into the universe, and that's going to be where you're reincarnated into, like a carrion bird. You might be reincarnated into a vulture, or if a wolf eats you, you might get reincarnated into a wolf. And then later on, when your consciousness comes back together, you might get to go into another person. But when you die, if you're cremated, you're going to burn up all that bacteria and it's going to die, and it's not going to get the chance to go out into these other creatures. And you're going to cut off your reincarnation that way. If we pour all these chemicals into you and this like formaldehyde and stuff that kills all this bacteria, then the bacteria is going to die and your consciousness is not going to get to go out. But if you're buried naturally, then your consciousness is just going to go into the ground and it's going to live. It's going to continue on. Your consciousness is going to continue on. Now, you're not going to have the same continuity that you have now. You're not going to be the same conscious person that you are right now, but let's face it, you're not the same conscious person you were when you went to sleep last night or 7 years ago. Definitely not 10 years ago or 20 years ago. You're not the same conscious person. So, after you die, but if you want to continue on after you die, then I think you have to be buried naturally.